Hello and welcome to Legal Bites. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we explain the law one bite at a time. We don't give legal advice, but we do talk about how the law works and try to look into our crystal ball to see how things might turn out. If you're enjoying this on YouTube, we'd love it if you could like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, all the great YouTube-y stuff. And if you want to listen while out and about, we're now offering our live streams in podcast form where you can leave a rating and review. Links are in the description below, as well as to our clips channel where you can find some of the best clips taken from our live streams. Otherwise, if you want to catch me elsewhere, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so on Locals, Patreon, or by becoming a YouTube member, or by buying some really awesome Legal Bites merch. Again, all links are in the description below. And with that said, let's get into it. Andy's saying hi. Sorry about that. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Andy, you're fine. It's probably... I think it's Mr. Bites. I think maybe he's home and she's freaking out. And it is Mr. Bites. All right. Now she can stop barking. Sorry about that, guys. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you're having a great Thursday wherever you are watching from. I hope that it is a wonderful day and that your week is going well. Yeah, I don't know if it's just me, but does it seem like this week is flying by? It kind of feels like this week is flying. Maybe it's when you're live streaming every day of the week, that things just kind of tend to move a bit faster. But yeah, no. So far this week is going pretty well. I don't know about you guys, but let me say hi to some folks in the chat. First off, with your birds, welcome to Bite Club. So happy to have you here. I hope you can join us tomorrow for our chill, relaxed, kind of casual Friday Bite Club members only stream. So anybody that is a member on YouTube or a supporter on Locals or Patreon will get an invite to that. You'll see a link in a post to the live stream. So I hope you can join us for that. And if not, there will be a replay for it. But anyway, I'm so happy to have you here. And then let me say hi to some other folks here. So Jennifer Starks, good morning from OKC. Good morning, Jennifer. Alejandro de la Cruz, hello. Kit Kat, hello. Pamela C says good morning. Genergy, hello and good morning from Sicklerville, New Jersey. I love to see it. Carly, good afternoon from Scotland. All righty. Indy's coming in with a treat. Indy, over here. Over here. Okay. Yeah. Oh, good girl. Okay. Shireen from coastal Yorkshire. Love it. And thank you for giving the phonetic way to say it. I appreciate that. Carrie Ann from Ontario, Canada. We've got Kelly Dawson from Ohio. Pamela C from Arizona. Aaron H from a brisk Orlando. I hope things are going well over there. I know you guys have been having some insane weather as well. And let's see here. I had these saved during the intro, but let's see here. All righty. We've already got, okay, Kate Leslie from North Carolina. Love it. Mr. Bennett and Grace Kelly and my pups. Also want to say hi to Indy. Well, hello back to your pups. Indy's enjoying a nice treato right now. But I guess she's a little too shy to do it on camera. Amanda Johnny, slow week here in Montreal. Oh man. Mew Mew 0203. Hello from Tokyo. Awesome. I'm so happy to see folks coming in all the way from Asia as well. Let's see. Okay, we've got, Shireen, please pass on chat's greetings to Mr. Bites. I absolutely will. I will for sure. We've got, Victoria says, good morning. My week is going slower than a turtle running through peanut butter. Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, hopefully you can get to the weekend sooner rather than later. But hopefully we can make that a little bit better too along the way. All right. Litha says, good morning from Southwest Wyoming. Very happy to see that. Secret Mixed Squirrel, hello from the top of the oak tree. Great. Julie Denny from Austin, Texas. We've got Sarah Sharp from Southern Illinois. 2Biz E4U from Boston. Love it. Hiba Al Sayed from Kuwait. Awesome. That's so cool. All right. And we've got Michael Fisher from Omaha. Awesome. I love to see you guys from all the way around the world. We've got Boogie Till You Bleed from Norway with love. We've got Cookie Monster from a very wet Edinburgh. I love to see it. And I think I may have skipped a couple here. Let's see. Hallie F from Hill Country in Texas. And Monica Erickson from Oxnard, California. Love it. Oh, we've even got from Rio right here, Fernanda Prontes. So great to see. And Keith Mellon from Ireland. That MF Wolf from Japan. Oh, great. Sarah from Switzerland, Tori Brigando from Arizona, and informative content from Good Morning from South Africa. It's my last month of law school. Well, congratulations. I hope that it's a good last month and that you finish strong. And then I don't know the requirements in South Africa if you have a bar exam like we do in the US in various states. But if you do, I hope that studying goes well and that everything goes well and you're able to get on to practicing and doing some good work. So Andy, the Game Maker, thanks so much for another super chat, brother. We watching any movie trailers today? No movie trailers on the docket for today, but we do have some video footage though. I will say, so we're gonna start off with well, let me say hello to a couple more people and then we'll get into the substantive content of the day. We've got I'm so sorry. I'm totally going to butcher this. Buruin from Wyoming and also Shalom from Israel, I presume. And I'm so sorry. I can't read Hebrew, so I don't know how to pronounce your name, but thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. So, okay, guys. So we've got, we don't have any movie trailers to go through today, although Andy does love to throw movie trailers and movie footage at me from time to time. But we do have some video footage, like I said. So let me kind of give a little bit of a breakdown of what we're going to talk about, and then we'll get into each topic. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to go through some updates in the OnlyFans murder case. So Courtney Clenney, who professionally goes by the name Courtney Tailor, she's an OnlyFans star and an Instagram influencer. She's been charged with murdering her boyfriend in Miami. This was back in April of this year. She was charged and arrested in August. So now she's kind of been in the process of gearing up for trial. Trial, last I checked, is scheduled for December 19th. And if there are cameras in the courtroom, I 100% am going to be live streaming that one because it's very fascinating. She claims self-defense but it's that self-defense claim is a little bit suspicious in comparison to what the coroner found, for example. So that one is gonna be an interesting one to take a look at. There is new video footage that has been leaked to the press from 2 days before the incident where Christian Obumseli, her boyfriend, died, where she killed him. So everyone agrees, like, who did the what, right? So everyone agrees that she killed him with a knife, but the question is, was it in self-defense or was it murder? That's really the main question of that case. And so there's some interesting footage that does kind of give a little bit of a twist potentially. It could be a little bit taken out of context. We're always trying to be on our guard for that. So, but this could be something that is potentially maybe favorable for her to a certain extent. We'll get into an article about that and we'll take a look at the video footage from the police body cam footage of a conversation that they had with her 2 days before about an incident with him. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit. Then we're going to get into Danny Masterson, because that one trial has actually started. So there's some detailed updates to get into already right off the bat. As we suspected, Scientology is a topic that came up almost immediately in that trial. So we're going to go through some more articles about that as well. And also still always keeping in mind that important information, relevant information could be left out of what has been written by journalists that are in the courtroom and whatnot, writing about this case. We've seen that before with other cases that we've had a very, very close eye on, and then looked at the media's reporting on things and been like, I did not see things this way. So with that said, I also wanted to let you guys know, I know that folks in the chat and in comments, I've gotten a lot of people asking me to reach out to Danny Ortega, who is an independent journalist who's been writing about Scientology for a very, very long time. I have reached out to him. We've emailed back and forth a little bit. And so we're going to try to find a time to have him come onto the channel. I don't know if it'll be pre-recorded or if it'll be a live stream, but we also have to find a time when he has, because he's going into trial every single day and observing trial every day. So when that happens, not only do you have the long days of trial of actually going there in person, like getting there, parking, waiting to get in, getting in, and then getting out at the end of the day, dealing with LA traffic, of course, on both ends of that. Then he's also trying to, get his write-ups of everything out every day. So he's understandably a very busy guy. So it could be a weekend thing that we do with having him on the channel at some point. But I just wanted to let you guys know I have listened to the requests, and I'm trying to figure out a way that we can get him on the channel at some point, just to hear his take on what he's been observing at trial. So then I think that probably the longest piece that we're going to be talking about today is also the Kevin Spacey trial, Anthony Rapp versus Kevin Spacey. It's a civil trial involving SA claims. That one is basically wrapped up, but they did in fact come back to trial on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, despite the fact that Kevin Spacey's attorney last Friday tested positive for COVID. So there was a big question as to whether or not they were going to be continuing, or where they would have to delay things for a bit. And so they were able to proceed on Monday. So there's quite a bit of updates since it's been a few days since I've talked about that trial in particular. So we've got a lot to get into today. So anyway, let's start with the OnlyFans murder case. And when I say OnlyFans murder, I'm not calling Courtney Clenney a murderer, because of course we don't know that. She's been charged, right? So she's been charged, and she absolutely has a right to put on a defense if that's what she wants to do. If she wants to plead not guilty, which is what she's done so far. And so, we're sort of trying to get whatever details we can that are coming out to the press about this case as it heads towards trial. And there's, like I said, there's some interesting stuff that's happened here. So let me just really quick take down some time stamps. Okay, here we go. All right, so here's an article from TMZ, and this is actually basically two updates here. There's two things that are happening here, but we'll just start with the title and work our way through this article, and we'll kind of go from there. So it says OnlyFans model Courtney Clenney, hectic 911 call after stabbing. BF says can't feel my arm in final moments. So yeah, there's actually two pieces here. There's the video that I've described that's from 2 days before the incident. Then there's the 911 call where she called, and you can kind of hear him in the background. I am not going to play that 911 call because it's a little gruesome, I suppose. But I will, however, link to the article in the chat right now, and there it is. And I will be putting that in the description of the video as well. So if you guys are interested in listening to that 911 call, you can go to TMZ's website and find it there. But let's go through this article. OnlyFans model Courtney Clenney broke down in tears and started screaming as she called 911 for help after stabbing her boyfriend, all while he was oddly calm in the final minutes of his life. The call is pretty disturbing. On the recording, first obtained by the Miami Herald, Clenney attempts to give the operator their address, and her BF Christian Obumseli is heard saying, "I can't feel my arm." Although his audio is in the background of Courtney's screams, it's clear Christian is fading fast. And this is obviously very, very tragic here, talking about his final moments. The operator attempts to calm down Clenney, but things spiral out of control pretty quickly. She starts sobbing as she apologizes to Obumseli and tells the operator he's bleeding from a stab wound in his torso. The call becomes inaudible toward the end, but as you know, the model told police she fatally stabbed Obumseli with a knife in their Miami condo, but claims it was self-defense. As we reported, newly released body cam footage showed police responding to their swanky condo just 2 days before the fatal incident, where she and a building employee say Obumseli had charged at her in the lobby, and staff had to step in to prevent him from hurting her. So if you guys remember, we previously saw leaked footage of her and Obumseli in an elevator where she very much looked like the aggressor, where he was actually, I'm going to pull this up in another tab. I might show this again just before. Yeah, okay. Let's see here. It is loading. And yeah, let me do this. Sorry, I'm doing this on the fly now. I totally had a plan, and now I'm changing it. This is what happens. Live streaming, we're improvising. Okay, so if you guys remember, I'll show again what happened here, and I will say before I show any of this, any footage here, obviously trigger warning for all of these things. We're talking about DV. We're showing images of violence between a couple, fighting, that kind of thing. So if this is, if this is something that you're particularly sensitive to, keep that in mind and do whatever you need to do to keep in a good, healthy space. So, okay. So just to make sure that folks are on the same page here. So here's what was shared months ago, showing the two of them in an elevator. So this is back in February, and then the altercation where he died happened in April. So she's looking very upset. She's grabbing him by the hair from behind, punching him in the head. He's kind of restraining her, but not, it seems to me like from what I've viewed here, he's not really returning in kind. He's kind of trying to restrain her to keep her away. Except for that. That's a hand in the face. But obviously this is, not a healthy relationship. This is not a good relationship. So, that is what we saw before, which definitely looks, by all accounts, like she is the aggressor there. Now we have here okay, let me see here. New body cam footage from 2 days before the incident. So April 3rd is when she ended up killing him with a knife. 2 days before that, so I suppose April 1st, was when she ended up calling the police. And so here's a conversation that she had with the police, talking about an incident that she had. And there's someone who works in the lobby of their apartment building as well. So he talks about what he observed and all this kind of stuff. So let's play this, and you guys let me know what you think. Let me know if this changes things for you as to how you see this particular case, because it definitely looks a little bit different. Now, granted, we are also going to be getting an impression from Courtney Clenney. So this video doesn't have Christian Obumseli in it. So I would be curious to see if there's another video from this day of the police talking to Obumseli to get his account of what had happened. So it's bound to be a relatively one-sided case, except for the objective third party, who is the gentleman working in the lobby, who says, who gives his account of what he observed. So let me play it, and then we can talk about it, I suppose.
Her boyfriend comes charging.
I hope you guys can hear it.
Towards her, and we actually try to get in the middle of it. So I told Artisha to go get the keys, so she can go back into her unit. The boyfriend actually came after her, and Paul was walking towards there. And then I just said, you know, enough is enough. Police need to be called. She said she don't want police to be called. But when it's in a common area and something happened like that, my safety is the residents first. We have residents.
And so she's, and I will be pausing this from time to time, partly for you know, just to give commentary, but also partly for fair use reasons, right? So, you know, so far he said that, you know, she didn't want him to call the cops. And some people will look at that and say that that is, you know, very suspect. It can be suspect, right? Because it can be, you know, someone who is an aggressor not wanting the police to dig around or what have you. But it can also be someone who is a DV victim who's afraid of getting retaliated against by their significant other for calling on the police, for talking to the police about this. So that is something that happens as well. So something to keep in mind either way, depending on, you know, what kind of an impression you get from this so far.
This out here, you know, filming and all this stuff going on in the lobby area and causing the nuisance. So I called because based on we still have him walking around the property, and we need to have him removed. Last time we saw him, he was on the ground level.
Okay.
So
Just let me know when my chances to talk. I'm not
you just
trying
want
to
to get into your point.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, but you
Time
told me I
out.
was
Time
trying
out.
to
Time
talk.
out. Let me talk. Okay.
I feel very like.
What's your name? Courtney.
Yes.
Okay, Courtney.
Why do you have something against me, man? Like I'm just trying to like.
What is anything against you?
It seems like
We're
you
trying
don't
to
like
talk.
people.
So you just want to get back in your apartment. Unfortunately, he can't be here at the property.
That is totally fine.
Okay.
He's been literally sleeping in my elevator room without permission.
What we're gonna do is we're gonna find him so he can leave the property, and you get back to your apartment. What else do you
I
need?
was told I was gonna get a chance to speak.
Go ahead, Courtney. What's going on?
Are you gonna listen?
We're listening. Go
Did you
ahead.
say something wrong?
Yes. I stayed in my apartment all day. I didn't take my dogs out for like 8 hours because I was afraid that when I came down here, he was going to be down. And when I did come down, I walked my dogs, and he was telling me he wouldn't leave me alone. I said, "Please just walk my dogs in peace. We're not together."
Courtney, does he have any property in your apartment?
Yes, so much. Can I, with respect, can I please? I just like, I just feel like I'm not being heard. Okay.
Go ahead.
So I had a lot of opportunities to call y'all, and I did not. So when he's following me around this dog park, I said, "There is no, your time is up." Like that's it. And then all of a sudden, like he's following me to the elevator, and I said, "Don't follow me." This guy said, "I shoved her." When I was upstairs.
So one thing is unclear. She says, this guy says I effing shoved him. And it's unclear because she's referred to both the gentleman that was initially talking to the police, and then she's also referred to Christian Obumseli. So someone saying that she shoved him. I don't know who. If it was the man working in the lobby saying that she shoved him, that's, you know, possibly a different story than Christian Obumseli saying that himself. I don't know, but let me go back just a little bit to go over that part again, because I thought that was kind of interesting.
Like he's following me to the elevator, and I said, "Don't follow me." This guy said, "I shoved her." When I was upstairs, and they showed it on my door, I said, "I shoved him." I said, "Show me the video." Like I really got angry because that did not happen. All I did was take my dogs. I feel like I am like.
All right. So what do you want to say?
I want to be like, I'm trying to be like exonerated, I guess, of like anything wrong. And I want him, okay, please.
It's an interesting word to use here, exonerated, because it sounds like she's worried that someone will say that she has done something wrong, which I don't know. I mean, I guess someone who has been a victim could be feeling like they've been gaslit into feeling like they've done something wrong to deserve something. I don't know, but it's an interesting word to use. I'm trying to look at this from both sides, because I do recognize that prior to watching this video, I've had a pretty clear feeling that it seemed to me like she was probably guilty based on some of the things that we have learned about the medical examiner's report about the knife and the way in which it was stuck in Obumseli, and how different that is from the way that Courtney Clenney described what happened with that knife. She said that she threw it, and the medical examiner basically says, that's not possible. Not with the way that it ended up in him. So, she might be playing up drama. She might actually be feeling this. It's tough to tell, because she definitely seems like she's in a heightened anxiety sort of state. And that could be indicative of either, feeling like she's been attacked by her significant other, or feeling like she's trying to play a certain role to cover tracks. I don't know.
I want a restraining order against Christian Obumseli.
We don't issue those.
Because,
Those
no, I'm
to
serious.
courts.
Can I do that?
You
Where
have to
can
go
I?
to court. You have to go
Okay,
to
but
downtown.
how
or
can I make
petition.
myself first? Because I know him and he would do it. How can I make myself first?
You got to get there first
175 Northwest for some.
before.
175 Northwest.
Is he already on the way?
We have no idea. We don't even know how it looks like.
We don't even know who he is. How do we know that?
So you question this. I need a restraining order against him.
Okay, do you hear all this?
Listen,
Okay, they're listening.
who's on the phone with you?
Just my dad.
Okay, well, let me
Which I think is reasonable.
let me explain to you something with your dad on the phone, so you could hear me. You asked me, how can I get a restraining order against him? I answer you, we don't issue those. That's through court. You asked me, I need to get one before him. I told you, the only way is for you to get to court. Then you asked me, is he on the way already? And I asked you, I don't even know how he looks like. You understand? Your questions are making much of an.
I am. Right now, like, I have not always been a victim, but like right now, I'm a freaking victim in the situation. I'm scared to go to want my dogs. I just walked in and I told him, you don't have a chance. And now all of a sudden, this is all happening.
What's his name?
Christian Tailor Obumseli.
Christian.
Please, just like don't. Get me kicked out of my own apartment.
We just want to get it. We just want to.
I'm scared. I'm scared of
him.
him.
Take her up to the apartment. Okay. Take her up.
So, yeah, interesting, right? I never want to be jumping to conclusions, but it could be somebody who is in a very tough fight, who wants to control a certain narrative. Could be. Or this could be just that she has a certain personality type where she wants to, where she thinks strategically, and she genuinely is, is in an abusive relationship. What it seems to me is that, like, if I were to put both of those clips that we watched just now, if I were to put those in front of, say, Dr. Honda, he probably would say this looks like a relationship with mutual abuse. Either way, there is definitely violence. It looks like on probably on both sides to a certain extent. Who hits more? It's interesting. It's an interesting question because of the fact that we, can tell that they are different sizes. So that's a factor in these kinds of situations. But either way, this is obviously a very, very toxic relationship that was very unhealthy for a period of time. And it could be an indicator for what happened on the night of April 3rd, 2022, when she did kill him with a knife, or maybe not, right? So that's also one of the dangers of like looking into these, is you can get a picture into what their relationship was like, but it's also not entirely clear if the night of April 3rd, they were both acting in conformity with these other instances. So, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely an interesting bit of information that we are looking at here. And I don't know. I don't know how I feel. I could go either way based on other evidence that would come in at trial. And I'm just even more interested in what is going to be coming out at trial. So we'll see what happens and what else comes out between now and December. But anyhow, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this in the chat or in the comments, because this is something that is, very, very interesting to continue to examine. All right. So let's turn now to Danny Masterson. This one is interesting as well. So this case has started in substance. Finally, they've been in basically jury selection for quite a while now. And then also we're trying to figure out who was going to be testifying, who wasn't, what kind of evidence is going to be coming in. All of these pretrial motions, essentially, that are very, very typical for any kind of trial. But now, yesterday, it looks like the case in chief actually started. So let's take a look at some articles here talking about what has happened so far. So first, we've got this New York Post article, and I will also put this one into the chat here so you guys can take a look at it later if you're interested. But okay, I'll get started. Danny Masterson are accusers. Silenced by Scientology, court hears. And again, I am self-censoring, not because I'm afraid of these words, because if we were to talk in real life, I would be able to talk very, very freely. I'm trying not to get tripped up by the YouTube algorithm, because I don't want things to get demonetized and limited in terms of like where YouTube will send these things. So yeah. So anyway, as we continue on, let me get into the substance of the article, but let me get the super chat here, because this is an interesting question. Litha says, regarding the restraining order, if she's afraid, who cares who's first? That's an interesting question. That is an interesting question, because it does seem to suggest that she cares about the narrative as opposed to just having distance between herself and him. But that's an interesting point. And I've got to think about that for a little bit longer to think if that would be an indicator as to whether she's more of an aggressor or a victim. But I think you're on the right track by asking that kind of a question, because that is one that does, I think, raise a little bit of suspicion. And I think that is something that the jury would likely be thinking about as well, especially if the prosecution sort of highlights that, to say that, like, look, 2 days before, she claims that there was this instance of aggression, and she wasn't talking about just, how do I distance myself from him? How do I get to a safe space? She was talking about how do I get a restraining order against this guy before he gets one against me? Like, that is an interesting sort of strategic question. And I think that you're definitely on the right track. Thanks so much for the super chat and for the question. Okay. So, all right. So back to this article. So Danny Masterson are accusers, silenced by Scientology, court hears. All right. So we've got Scientology is already front and center here. The Church of Scientology is accused of silencing Danny Masterson's alleged victims by saying they would be excommunicated from the organization for reporting his alleged crimes to police, a Los Angeles court was told Tuesday. At the opening of the trial against Masterson, prosecutors outlined his 3 accusers' versions of events, including claims Scientology officials dissuaded them from going to police. Deputy District Attorney Reinhold Mueller told jurors one of the victims, who was also a Scientologist at the time, had told senior members of the church how Masterson, 46, allegedly R''d her in his home in 2001, but was told to keep quiet. Using her court-appointed name to hide her true identity, he said, one of the things Christina B. understood was she couldn't report Mr. Masterson because he was an upstat, quote unquote, someone who contributes a lot to the church. She believed in Scientology. She truly believed she pulled it in and it was not R. She trusted the church. In Scientology, the term pulled it in refers to a bad thing which happens to someone as a result of something they did in a past life. The prosecutor added Christina B. also was told Masterson was her 2D or second dynamic, a Scientology term meaning there was a personal relationship between the two. And because of that, the incident was quote unquote her fault and would not be considered R. Yikes. This is even more of an instance where it seems like the church is coming in to explain a lot of things. Not just, the delays in which or the delays which kept people from actually going to the police for these things. Interesting. That's a very interesting point. I hadn't ever heard of these terms like pulling it in and second dynamic. I'd be very curious to hear, or upstat for that matter. These are all new terms for me. But this does refer back to what I've talked about before, how you can have, whether it's in an organization like Scientology, any other religious or pseudo religious, however you want to call it, or any secular organization, any organization really that has a hierarchy and where people have where that hierarchy has a decent amount of control over people, there is a possibility of corruption, right? Where someone is required to go through that organization to lodge a complaint of some sort against somebody who has more power than the person who was allegedly victimized. There is a possibility of corruption. And so it seems to be that is an issue that the prosecution is putting in front of the jury right from the start. Mueller said a higher-ranking church member told the alleged victim, "You can't R your 2D. Don't ever say that again." I cringe at that a little bit. I'm not going to lie. Mueller said the two other alleged victims, known as Jen B. and N. Trout, and also Scientologists at the time, were told not to report the SAs or they would be labeled suppressive persons or someone who is excommunicated from the church. None of the alleged victims knew each other until years after the relationships with Masterson. During jury selection, Judge Charlene Olmedo had made clear Scientology was not on trial and the focus had to remain on whether Masterson had committed R. However, she has allowed evidence about the religion to be presented to explain context, and the religion loomed large over the first day of proceedings. And just after getting into Scientology and really sort of trying to see what's underneath the hood over the last, couple weeks, really a few weeks, I will say that this is something that is a substantial hurdle for Danny Masterson here. This is something that can definitely create some bias, even though it is arguably necessary to give this context. I do agree that if this is part of the reason why these women say that they didn't come forward before, why they say that they felt like they were being to a certain extent controlled by the organization, that does give context. Now, whether the jury believes it or not is going to come down to their evaluation of these witnesses. But the more that Scientology plays a role in this case, the more of an uphill battle Danny Masterson arguably will have because of the reputation that the church has. Mueller told the jury he would show during the trial that the reason for each defendant's actions and inactions were because of their system of beliefs, which differ greatly to other religious practices. Defense attorney Philip Cohen quickly rebutted the prosecution, immediately questioning the motive and character of the alleged victims and claiming details of their stories had changed over the years. Cohen said despite repeated warnings from investigators, the three accusers, who have all now left Scientology, had spoken with one another and already contaminated the case. Now, this is an argument that is similar to what Marilyn Manson is saying about Evan Rachel Wood and Ilma Gore, saying that they sort of like gathered a bunch of women to concoct a narrative and to come out and accuse him together. So, it's that is a possibility here, but it'll be interesting to see what kind of evidence they put forward to back this up. Because, so far what was written earlier in this article was that they said that these women said that they didn't know each other until really years later. Okay. You're going to hear that after they were ordered, instructed, and admonished by Los Angeles Police Department, or LAPD, these women spoke to each other, spoke to other witnesses, Cohen said. I think you will hear through those conversations that these themes start to take place. The defense attorney also attempted to poke holes into each of the women's stories. He said alleged victim Christina B., Masterson's ex-girlfriend, never told investigators about him allegedly pulling a gun on her as she was being AR'd, a key piece of evidence in bringing the case to trial. Now, if there are inconsistencies that are going to be brought up, that is something that is going to affect this case as well. That's an interesting point. If she didn't mention that she had been that a gun had been pulled on her before, and then later on, that's a detail that has been added to her story of what she says happened to her. I mean, it could be something that she just remembered later, that maybe after some time to sit with it, it's possible. Or it could be what Amber Heard did, which is elaborate the more the time went on, until you realize that a story has been elaborated so to such an extent that it just doesn't really seem plausible, especially when you compare it to the first time that she told the story. Sometimes that can happen over time, and it could be that she's fully convinced as to what she says happened to her. But when you look at it as an objective observer, it doesn't look believable, does it? So, if this is just one detail that is different, that's, that may not be enough to convince a jury to side with Danny Masterson. Or if that's big enough for them, that might introduce enough reasonable doubt. Because one thing to keep in mind with these criminal cases like Danny Masterson's is that he actually doesn't have the highest, burden to meet to win his case, right? The burden is on the prosecution to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he did these things. So if there is any amount of reasonable doubt, not just doubt, the doubt has to be reasonable, then he's not going to be convicted. There's a reason why these criminal cases have such a high standard, and it's because you are taking away somebody's life and liberty and putting them behind bars for something that you say that they did. So when we do that to someone, we need to make sure that the standard is high enough that we are substantially certain that they did the thing that we are accusing them of. Okay. Back to the article. Manson, dressed in a light blue blazer and tie, remained quiet throughout the day's testimony, which is in stark contrast to the Brooks trial that's been happening, the Darrell Brooks trial, where he's been representing himself, and sometimes in a suit and tie, other times not so much. So that so far is proper etiquette in this trial, at least. A few feet behind him sat his family, including wife and actress Bijou Phillips, his brothers, and I'm so sorry. I've only ever read her name, so I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. His brothers, Malcolm in the Middle star, Christopher, and Jordan Masterson. Cohen also said alleged accuser Jen B. had threatened to sue Masterson and noted how she had previously accepted a settlement and signed a non-disclosure agreement with him. Jen B., the first witness to take the stand, said she knew Masterson from the church, and her former best friend, Bree Schaefer, had worked for the actor. She added she had grown up around Masterson and other Scientologists, including Luke Watson, Lisa Marie Presley, and actor Giovanni Ribisi. Growing up in Scientology, there are policies about non-Scientologists, Jen B. said. The goal of Scientology is to clear the planet. You can be reported for fraternizing with WOGs, or non-church members. She then described how she had a couple drinks at a bar with Masterson one night, but suddenly started drifting in and out of consciousness when they went back to his house on September 2002. And so as soon as we see this date here, right? This is now 20 years ago, right? Yeah. Lawyer math. Yeah. 20 years ago. Almost exactly. This is, it's a long time to be remembering things. It is a very long time. So memory is going to be an issue, just like we talked about in the Kevin Spacey case. It's going to be an issue in this case as well as the Harvey Weinstein case. So to the extent that details are going to be fuzzy, that is potentially going to be introducing some could be some reasonable doubt that gets introduced over time. So we'll see how much detail can be given from 20 years of history. Jen B cried and at times struggled to speak as she recounted the moment she alleged Masterson did certain things. I'll let you guys read it on the page. While she was barely conscious. I didn't realize that's what he was doing until the moment it happened, Jen B said. I reacted to the pain. I had never done that before. I didn't think it would hurt so bad. Why would someone do that? I screamed no out loud. I fell asleep and curled into a ball. I don't remember really much, but I woke up the next morning with a horrible headache. I was looking to see if there were condoms used. I was worried. After her testimony, jurors were dismissed for the day. At that point, Cohen made a motion for a mistrial, claiming the prosecution's line of questioning analyzed Scientology beyond the scope of what was allowed by the court. Judge Olmedo denied the request and pointed out Cohen himself had brought up Scientology during his opening statement, saying it was the big elephant in the room, quote unquote, but also said the prosecution had pushed the boundaries of what she would allow regarding the religious discussion. So that's a little bit of a shot across the bow here, right? Because number one, Cohen brought it up himself in his opening statement. So he can't exactly say, no, Your Honor, you weren't allowing anyone to talk about Scientology if he was doing it himself. But the question is, was the prosecution sort of expanding beyond what the judge said that she would allow? I don't know. So if she's saying that the prosecution pushed those boundaries, then that's a little bit of a subtle warning to the prosecution to say, like, knock it off. If you keep doing that, you're gonna land yourself in trouble here. Scientology has previously said it is, quote unquote, quote, inappropriate to comment on a pending criminal matter, unquote, regarding the Masterson case. The church has also said it, quote, has no policy prohibiting or discouraging members from reporting criminal conduct of Scientologists or of anyone to law enforcement. Church policy explicitly demands Scientologists abide by all laws of the land, including the reporting of crimes. That's a pretty vague, generic kind of statement, though, right? And it's interesting to see if they are they trying to lawyer through the policies that they actually have in place? Like, do they have technically no written policy for that? But then there's a wink, wink, nod, nod that everybody kind of knows that no one's supposed to talk to law enforcement, because that's sort of the attitudes that people have when people actually talk about potentially going and talking to the police. That's some circumstantial kind of evidence that can come in and sort of color this for the jury. Masterson has pleaded not guilty to all charges. He faces a prison sentence of 45 years to life if convicted. The trial continues. So, all right. So that is that. But I do want to do another article here because of the fact that, this is the New York Post, and sometimes the New York Post gets things wrong. So I'm going to go through another article. Deadline has got some pretty detailed stuff here on, let's see here, on the trial. And they've had some pretty detailed stuff so far. But the only problem with Deadline is the way in which they write it. They do like these chunks of updates, and the latest update is the one on top. And so trying to find where it actually starts is a little difficult because it kind of bounces around here. Let me see here. Okay. Well, I guess this is where we will start. Well, I'll first start with the title here. Okay. So this is from Deadline. It says Danny Masterson paid Jane Doe, number one, $400,000 to sign an NDA. Our trial testimony reveals Scientology again comes to the fore. Okay. So scrolling back down, like I said, this is okay. All right. I think this is where it starts. Okay. So, getting into this article, updated with additional testimony from morning session. The second day of testimony in the Los Angeles rape trial, whoops, I said it, of Danny Masterson, heard evidence by Jane Doe number 1 about an alleged second SA by the ex That 70s show star, with the judge at one point pausing testimony when she broke down on the stand. And it's interesting because, reading that somebody broke down on the stand, it sounds very emotional. It sounds very authentic and real. But as the videos that we just watched in the OnlyFans murder case can show, sometimes when somebody is breaking down and showing a lot of emotion, that can cause some conflicting sort of feelings with people that are observing that emotional breakdown. There could be various reasons why somebody is breaking down emotionally. So, as we're reading, this is one of the limitations of following a court case, a trial, through this kind of written word, right? Like, we can't really tell how to evaluate that, if that seems like it's authentic, or if it seems like people are manipulating or trying to manipulate people. So one thing to keep in mind here, and I'm not trying to disparage or question necessarily the alleged victim here. I'm just sort of pointing that out, that we can't really tell just by reading these articles here that level of detail. Okay. All right. So that's the paragraph there. Okay. Continuing testimony that began yesterday. Jane Doe number 1 / Jen B testified to the full downtown courtroom on Wednesday about an alleged violent R against her by Masterson on April 25th, 2003. So again, we're talking almost 20 years ago, following a birthday party in LA's Silver Lake neighborhood. Jen B said she was at the actor's Los Feliz home, where she says she had been previously assaulted by Masterson in 2002. Served a tumbler of a really sweet, really fruity alcoholic beverage by Masterson amidst a small party of friends and the likes of the actor's publicist, Jenny Weinman. The then 27-year-old Jen B talked about Masterson trying to toss her in his jacuzzi and feeling quote unquote woozy. Recounting this morning how she was partially dressed and drenched from being thrown in the jacuzzi, Jen B told the court that she said at the time, I feel so sick. I'm going to vomit everywhere. Becoming emotional, she told of Masterson picking her up and saying he was going to take her to a bathroom to put his fingers down her throat to throw up. And depending on the context of that, I can see someone saying that in two different ways, right? Number one, being malicious, which is what she's suggesting here. I can also see that as somebody trying in some sort of drunken stupor to try to help her if she's saying that she's feeling really sick. Help, like I kind of cringe when I say that a little bit, because I'm thinking of like how many people have been to a college party or some kind of party where people are just absolute idiots, right? And in a drunken stupor and trying to solve problems in ways that are not exactly the smartest ways to do things. I'm trying to look at this objectively, from multiple perspectives as I'm reading this, and there is a possibility of that here as well. Hey, what's up? You want to say hi? You want to say hi to people? Are you hungry again? Does Mr. Bites need to give you food? All right. Sorry, puppy. I'm busy. Okay. Recounting this morning. Oh, I already read that part. Earlier today, the witness said she was pleading no and feeling panic as Masterson carried her up a flight of stairs to his house, or in his house. Breaking down in loud sobs on occasions later in the morning, Jen B chronicled for the court how Masterson mocked her in the bathroom for having vomit all over your effing hair, and he dragged her into the nearby stand-up shower, the incident striking in its similarity to a previous alleged assault of Jen B by Masterson in 2002. Hi. Hey. Hi. Hi. Sorry guys. Indy keeps wanting my attention. With an image of the shower in question up on the video monitor, Jen B recollected coming back into greater consciousness as the water pelted down on her. She also described Masterson groping her, pulling her hair, and the witness lashing out with punches to stop him as he said, "Grab the effing soap." Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Hi. Hi. Okay. Yes. I love you. I love you. I love you too, puppy. What, you want to come cuddle? Is that what you want? Is that what you want? It's probably food. It's usually food that you want. All right. Stating that she only had vivid memories of what happened next as she was moved into Masterson's master bedroom, Jen B acknowledged that her sense of a strict timeline is unclear. This is something that is potentially problematic for her case, right? For her side of things, because the fuzzier things are, the harder it may be for the jury to be able to accurately evaluate her testimony, and so we're really dealing with two things in this instance with this particular witness, right? We're dealing with perception issues because she's talking about a lot of alcohol, so much alcohol, in fact, that she's thrown up on her hair and elsewhere. And then we're also talking about potentially memory issues because it's been almost 20 years since this incident happened. So when she's got issues with these things, that's potentially problematic for the prosecution. And that creates, a little bit of a muddy middle, which in a criminal case is absolutely going to go to the defense. Okay, and then this next sentence, I'm also going to be censoring myself a bit so you guys can read it. But he was on top of me. His something was doing something, and that is what I awoke to. The witness said between tears about the alleged second R. Jen B outlined how she tried to push him away as Masterson continued to have relations with her and smothered her. I couldn't breathe, she said, as a pillow was on her face. I went unconscious. When I came to, he was still on top of me. There was no pillow on top of me, Jen B added, noting that Masterson's face looked so angry. I'd never seen that. He was going to kill me, she said, breaking down on the stand with murmurs of, I can't do this. Boy, this is difficult, right? Definitely difficult. I mean, either way, right? Either whether she is telling the truth or not, if she's telling the truth, this is a witness who is having to relive something that is very, very traumatic, or we're talking about someone who is making up allegations, or perhaps, elaborating on something that may have happened between the two of them, and to such an extent that it is not accurate. So, either way, this is difficult. This is a very difficult case. The judge stopped the proceedings and called a 5-minute break, sending the jury out of the courtroom. The only sound that could be heard besides shuffling feet were Jen B's cries. Soon after the jury exited, the witness left the room as well. She returned several minutes later and walked back to the witness box. I don't want to break down, she said. Reciting from memory after taking a moment to compose herself, Jen B told the court, he said, "You like this." He said, "You're not going to tell effing Lisa. You're not going to tell effing Paige." As some sort of, and I think that Lisa, the Lisa that he's referring to is Lisa Marie Presley. Paige, I am not certain who he's referring to there. As some sort of chaos, quote unquote, happened over by the door of the bedroom and another man's voice could be heard yelling, Jen B said that Masterson pulled out a gun and then put it back in a bedside drawer. Gesturing that she herself reached out with her left hand towards the same drawer, Jen B said Masterson slammed the drawer on her hand. As Los Angeles Deputy District Attorney Reinhold Mueller and Jen B both spoke in a hurried fashion over the moments with the black metal gun, and Masterson defense lawyer Philip Cohn demanded more clarity. The court reporter also asked the witness to let the prosecutor finish his questioning. So it seems like things were getting they're starting to sort of speak over one another, which happens from time to time. Sometimes it's just people get very excited and they want to get their story out. In the incredibly intense and heightened moment, Jen B said that Masterson told her to shut the F up as the noise at the bedroom door continued. Don't effing move, you understand? Don't effing move. Masterson supposedly screamed at Jen B, who said that she soon afterwards passed out. I am very curious to hear, who else was at this party at the time and what man was supposed to be on the other side of the door there. If she knew, if someone else knew, if somebody could have identified themselves as somebody who was there. The witness told the partially masked courtroom that after drifting in and out of consciousness, she then hid in a closet, hoping Masterson wouldn't find her. She said she eventually crawled out only to be scooped up by Masterson, put on the bed, and told to go to sleep next to him. Waking up the next morning and going downstairs in the house partially clothed, Jen B said she bumped into friend Luke Watson. According to Jen B's testimony, fellow Scientologist Watson said, "You're not going to say a word. You're going straight to the president's office now," before she could get many words out about what had happened. The president in question was Susan Watson, Luke's mother, who handled celebrity matters out of Scientology's Celebrity Center mansion on Franklin Avenue. Jen B said that Luke Watson told her Masterson had already been there to see the president. Worried about the flight she was supposed to take to Florida later that spring day for a pre-scheduled family trip to celebrate her father's birthday, Jen B did not go to the Celebrity Center. That's a question. That's a question here, right? Yeah, and that's also a tough one, right? Because I've heard from people who have been DV victims who have written to me since the Depp trial, et cetera, talking about their experiences and coming forward for, to talk about what someone did to them, especially if they know that somebody is in a position of power, is very difficult. However, I will say the jury might not look very favorably upon this by saying she instead decided to go on vacation with her family and didn't go and file a report to the extent that she could. Instead, after getting her car and other belongings from the home of Masterson's personal assistant, she went to her parents' house, faced anger from family that she had missed a birthday barbecue, and soon headed to the airport for the trip. Okay. Interesting. I mean, I also, if we were to look at this from Danny Masterson's perspective, there also could be a scenario where, where somebody is dealing with family ire and then has a reason for, or comes up with a reason for doing something that has angered the family. I mean, that seems like a very big lie to make up for something that seems relatively small. So I don't know that I would go with that, but I'm just sort of trying to play devil's advocate here. But to respond to the chat, I'm not saying that she owes the Celebrity Center anything. I'm just saying that juries will often want to see that if somebody has been through something, that they are going to make some kind of a report of it. And the Celebrity Center is ostensibly the method by which she would have been filing a report because of the fact that, oh boy, hang on. Looks like I need to, give me 1 second here. Looks like I need to put this on subscribers only because we have sexy bots again. Okay, here we go. Now, what I'm saying here is that they have what has been described in Scientology is that there's a prescribed method for Scientologists um to make complaints like this, right? They were supposed to, keep things within Scientology because they were supposed to, use Dianetics in the process to figure out, who was right and who was wrong or what have you. There's this idea that that is what's supposed to happen and how it's supposed to happen. So, I would be looking for the extent to which these alleged victims have tried to use that process to make some kind of a report. Now, with that said, I also very much recognize the sensitivity of these kinds of things, and that when somebody has been through something like this, they don't necessarily file a report immediately because there's a lot of shame, because there's a lot of questioning that happens where they are, questioning themselves, their decision making, their, self guilt, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, but going on vacation instead of making a report, some people might view that and say this was not that important to her if she decided to instead go on vacation rather than doing this. I don't know. Some might say that. Yeah. With more questioning of Jen B from the DA's office and cross-examination by the defense expected to take up most of the afternoon session, the trial Wednesday will pick up around 1:30 p.m. Pacific time after a lunch break. The fruity drinks and jacuzzi have come up several times in opening statements and previous testimony. As a near stone-faced Masterson looked on in court today, Jen B described being thrown in the jacuzzi by the actor with most of her clothes still on. There were two quote unquote other girls and two male friends in and around the jacuzzi at the time, the witness noted. I felt like I shouldn't be here, Jen B said, just before the court adjourned for its morning break in the trial, in which Masterson is facing charges of 3 counts of forcible R-ing that allegedly occurred in 2001 and 2003 at his Hollywood Hills home. He was arrested in June 2020 and had been out on $3 million bail. Masterson, who has denied giving non-consensual relations, faces a possible maximum sentence of 45 years to life in prison if found guilty. With her voice cracking, Jen B admitted early in today's morning session that she was terribly embarrassed, really ashamed about what had happened with Masterson in the previous 2002 assault, which was detailed in yesterday's testimony. Stating her reluctance to discuss what had occurred, she did reveal under questioning from Los Angeles Deputy District Attorney Reinhold Mueller that she eventually told a number of people, including Lisa Presley, about the assault. No way, I can't believe he did that, Presley supposedly responded. So that's, it's interesting to see at what point she did start to tell people about it. But this idea of someone being terribly embarrassed, really ashamed, is common in these kinds of cases where someone has legitimately been victimized. So, yeah. And this is an interesting point too from Newspin here. I think going on vacation versus filing a report could also be justified when considering people's fight or flight response. Filing a report would be traumatic by itself. That's a fair point too. That's a very good point. Yeah. Very, very well taken as well. As the defense objected to the line of questioning, the witness went on to say that reports were written on her to Scientology officials and she was frozen out by many other members of her immediate church social circle. Asked by Mueller for more information on those reports, an increasingly hesitant Jen B turned to Judge Charlene Olmedo to ask, "Am I allowed to answer?" And so this is probably, she's probably wondering, we're getting into Scientology territory. How far can I go? And that's a fair question. The role of Scientology and its practices has been a live wire in this case from the start and took up the bulk of Tuesday's proceedings. With Masterson and all the alleged victims being present and former members of the church, the interactions of those involved have been partially weaved into the practices of the church, as was the subject of a prickly session in front of the judge today before the jury was brought in. struggling to describe the impact and quote unquote chaos amid the self described tight knit group of younger Scientologists after Jen B told others about the alleged assault. She told the court that, in fact, following a moral correction, quote unquote, meeting with church ethics officer Julian Schwartz, she said she was forced to make peace with Masterson, that we could be cool. She went on to say she was pressured by the social dynamics of her Scientologist faith and never be a victim ethos to bury the hatchet with Masterson. That is tough. Jen B also spoke of a phone call with Masterson, who was river rafting at the time, and asked her, "So we're good now?" That's tough. That is really tough. In a trial that is scheduled to run until around November 19th, the day got off to a later start than usual today because one of the jurors was delayed in getting to court. However, once things kicked off around 9:30 a.m., everything was a direct pickup from where the testimony ended Tuesday. Not that everyone sat around twiddling their thumbs beforehand while waiting for the jury, as lawyers argued again before the judge about the presence of Scientology in the trial. Although his latest request for a retrial was denied late Tuesday, defense attorney Philip Cohen again took umbrage with Mueller's opening statement and the early section of Jen B's testimony. Specifically, Cohen's focus was on the introduction of Scientology policies and specifically the use of the word enemy, quote unquote, by the witness in describing how the church supposedly views members fraternizing with non-Scientologists for any purpose other than bringing them into the fold. Previous rulings by Olmedo limited the manner and context in which Scientology could be brought up, a fact Cohen leaned into hard this morning. In that, the lawyer brought up a number of media reports about Tuesday's opening statements and further proceedings, bluntly noting that the media reports may be talking a lot about Scientology. Olmedo said, perhaps that's because both lawyers seem to be talking about nothing but Scientology. That's quite a response from the judge. Initially clipped by Olmedo as he launched into a history of the case, Mueller cut to the chase and pointed out that Jen B had actually brought up in deposition testimony the consequences of reporting the assaults by Masterson to the church. In that previous testimony, the term enemy was mentioned twice by Jen B and was framed in the context of her impressions of what did and what could happen to her. As will likely be the case over the scope of this trial, and after rejecting yet another mistrial request made this morning, the judge reiterated her ruling of October 4th on the scope of Scientology's presence in the trial. The court will allow evidence and testimony on Scientology to explain the victim's delay in reporting the incident to the police, Olmedo said earlier this month. As well, cautioning the DA to more specific in questioning go forward. I think it's supposed to be going forward. The judge said the use of the word enemy by itself is not prejudicial, but inquiries must focus on matters related to the church that make sense to the victim's state of mind. Further, the October 4th ruling permits introduction of Scientology into the trial as it pertains to the victim's belief on the fallout of reporting. Sorry, I just got distracted. Further, the October 4th ruling permits introduction of Scientology into the trial as it pertains to the victim's belief on the fallout of reporting crimes to authorities outside the church, fear of being declared a suppressive person, and any fear of retaliation and harassment victims may have. While a 2004 settlement Jen B made with Masterson and its dollar amount can be brought up, documents related will not be admitted. Also, regarding, and that's probably because of the confidentiality clauses in that document. So, I mean, it's even surprising that the existence of this NDA is coming up, but I suppose it's relevant, at least from the perspective of the defense, anyway, to say, hey, look, we went through this and we settled this out. So I don't know. Sorry, finding my spot again. Okay. Also, regarding the pending 2017 civil suit Jen B and other alleged victims made against Scientology and its leadership for claims of stalking and more as a result of going to the LAPD, the judge read from her ruling and said that the complaint cannot be admitted, but the unsuccessful letter written to Scientology's international justice chief by the victim seeking permission to contact the police can be. This is an R case. Go to the incidents, the judge told all the lawyers. She later spoke directly to Jen B as the court awaited the arrival of the tardy juror and told her to keep her answers primed on the questions asked and nothing more. I understand, said the witness. The trial is expected to run until mid-November with a witness list that includes Lisa Marie Presley and Hollywood lawyer Marty Singer, among others. In many ways, the Church of Scientology has been an unnamed co-defendant in the case even before jury selection began this week. The David Miscavige-led organization petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court for a writ of certiorari to halt the accuser's lawsuit, but earlier this month, SCOTUS declined to hear the case. So now we scroll back up to the very top where we get the update from the afternoon from yesterday. So far, this does look a little bit muddy. But it's these kind of cases can be really hard for this exact reason. And I do understand folks talking about in the chat that many women don't ever report these things because of all kinds of reasons, right? Fear, shame, embarrassment, self guilt, gaslighting, all kinds of reasons. So it's hard to parse through these things, but even harder for us to parse through these things through articles like this without watching the actual testimony for ourselves, right? And I do understand why there are not cameras in the courtroom. It's most likely chiefly because of the Doe witnesses, the Doe alleged victims, right? To give them a sense of privacy in what is already a very sensitive, very exposing kind of case. But yeah, this is a tough one, I will say. So far, looking at this, trying to look at this from both sides, this is a tough one to parse through so far. Jane Doe number 1 on Wednesday afternoon testified that everything hurt so bad in the aftermath of an alleged second R by Danny Masterson in April 2003, as she continued on the witness stand in Masterson's R-ing trial in downtown Los Angeles. Apologize. I'm sort of bumbling my way through not using the word. The post-lunch session also revealed that Jane Doe number 1, also known as Jen B, was paid $400,000 in installments after signing a non-disclosure agreement, effectively squelching a report she had made to the LAPD in 2004. I looked for blood, she went on to say, of the pain and discomfort she experienced on a flight to Florida with her family in the hours after the supposed SA at Masterson's Hollywood Hills home. Delineating the physical ailments and bruises that were appearing on her body during that trip nearly 20 years ago, then Scientologist Jen B also testified that because of the family members who were not associated with the church, she put on an appearance of smile, everything is always great, during the family sojourn following the alleged R-ing. While on that family vacation in Clearwater, Florida, Jen B said she did tell her non-Scientologist cousin Rachel of the incident with Masterson, begging Rachel not to tell anyone else, especially her own Scientologist parents. Starting to cry on the stand, Jen B recounted a 1.5-minute telephone conversation with Masterson during the trip where he told her we had a good time when she asked him what happened in his bedroom just days before. So, I mean, if she did tell a cousin about this, like that weekend within days, that is something that is, that is more supportive for the prosecution side. In obvious disgust even now, Jen B says she hung up on Masterson. Moving slowly through the sequence of events with the witness, Los Angeles Assistant District Attorney Reinhold Mueller displayed a number of photographs of Jen B on the courtroom video monitor. Many were of Jen B during the spring 2003 family vacation or around the same time. With one particular photo, Mueller asked Jen B to show the court and jury where the previously stated bruising was on her body. Bruising that was hard to see from the rear of the room. As objections began to volley from the defense table, the testimony shifted to Jen B coming back to California from the family trip and eventually her going to her Scientologist ethics officer to tell him what had happened. As laid out previously in the trial, ethics officer Julian Schwartz sought to cover up the event, in Jen B's opinion, which is all she was allowed to testify to today, expressing fears that she would be ostracized if she was declared a suppressive person for reporting the alleged R-ing outside Scientology circles and lose her family, friends, livelihood, and that of her young daughter. The witness broke into tears once again as she testified. And that's a very strong reason for somebody not to go to the police. All of those reasons, right? To be completely ostracized from a community that I think she also grew up in. So a community that you have very strong ties with, very weak ties with people on the outside of that community. You lose your friends, your family, and your livelihood, resources, family. That's a very, very, very significant reason for someone not to go to the police. I will say that. As Jen B spoke and cried on the stand, Masterson, his lawyers, and his family and friends present in the courtroom looked on almost expressionless. Even with her misgivings about her status in the church, Jen B did go to the police, she said. She went to the Hollywood LAPD station on June 6, 2004, to make a report. On that seemingly prolonged occasion, Jen B said she additionally handed over Scientology reports from herself and Masterson on the matter, as well as other related documents that she had acquired, as well as photographs. And I will say, so she did go to the police. She eventually did go to the police, and she went back in 2004. So we're not talking. This is different here than some of the cases where we are talking about somebody didn't want to say anything until the Me Too movement happened. And that's where the alleged victim either was, you can characterize them either as having, I don't know if you guys can hear Indy like sighing very loud, but she's like very bored, it sounds like. But what I was going to say is, this is when somebody makes the allegation in either during the height or in the wake of the Me Too movement, either it could be that they have been emboldened by so many other people coming forward, and they've finally come to terms with the ability to come forward themselves, or it could be people that are taking advantage of a movement and trying to play themselves as a victim. So that's obviously what we're trying to figure out in cases like these. But here, I mean, this is somebody who went to the LAPD back in 2004. This is long before the Me Too movement. So the prosecution has that in their favor for this, to say that there are records, ostensibly there are records that she did go to the police and did try to make a report. As has been the case for most of today, Jen B seemed tentative over and over to talk too much about the supposed inner workings of Scientology. With a distinct figurative chill in the room, the defense threw up objection after objection over matters related to the church and its policies. Add to that, Judge Charlene Olmedo took testimony out of evidence on several occasions and required ADA Mueller to reframe a number of his questions to be less centered on the church. Yeah, so this is going to be very messy. And I will say, as far as these objections go, depending on how the jury is looking, what's happening with their attention level, sometimes objecting is a bad idea because it just draws attention to the fact that you don't want them to hear what it is that is being said. It's really, really, it's like the quote, the famous quote from Liar Liar, right? Like, objection, what's the basis of your objection? It's really damaging to my case. It can play off like that. or it could be legitimately this is outside the scope of what the court is allowing, and so I need to make sure that this is a clean fight according to the rules that the court has set for the parties here. It's hard to tell what that looks like without actually seeing the courtroom ourselves. But, even still, like even if the defense is putting up these objections legitimately, it can also have the impact of trying to put a genie back in a bottle, right? Because if questions are framed in a certain way, sometimes it's not, not even necessarily getting an answer from the witness. It's just putting the question in front of the jury that matters. So I'm very curious to know what the line of questions were that through objection after objection to see, how that actually played out, and whether the jury is likely to focus in on the questions that were asked, even if there are no answers to them. Very like this is some of the fascinating kind of strategic stuff that I makes me really wish that we could have an eye in the courtroom. At one point, Jen B looked around the court and said, "I don't know if I'm allowed to say what he said to me," after being asked about a meeting with Schwartz after going to the LAPD. Told directly by Olmedo that she could tell the court what was said, she said, Schwartz said, "You're effed. You know how effed you are?" After Jen B admitted that she had given the cops his name and number. Amid the fallout Jen B experienced, she expected to be declared a suppressive person and shunned by Scientology. Instead, after a visit to her parents' home by a church lawyer, she was told to go to attorney Marty Singer's Beverly Hills office and sign some documents. After being told to sit in a Lavely and Singer conference room for 2 hours, Jen B said the church lawyer and Singer returned. Following an outburst after being left hanging for 2 hours and up against a deadline to pick up the suppressive person declaration, Jen B said she signed an NDA that was on the conference room table. Prevented from even touching the documents, Jen B says she watched Singer turn the pages and show her where to put her name. Now, this also is right in line with what Leah Remini has said about signing documents within the Church of Scientology, right? Like if you guys watched yesterday, the live stream, her unfortunately ill-fated live stream that is currently not up because there's a copyright claim which I've appealed, and hopefully it'll get reinstated and whatnot, re-released again. But it was a really interesting bit of information that we got to there with coming from Leah Remini talking to Joe Rogan, where she talks about how she says, they give you all of these legal documents. They never allow you to actually look at it. And so if she has actually signed an NDA and she wasn't allowed to even look at the substance of what it was that she was signing, that is not proper consent, right? That is, she's got a good argument for saying that the NDA can't be enforced. She did notice a name that she didn't know, David Duncan, which later was revealed to be a pseudonym for Masterson himself. Jen B also detailed how she was to be paid $400,000 in installments over a year for signing the NDA. It has been long known that Jane Doe number 1 was paid a 6-figure sum, but this is the first time she herself has given an exact number in public. As the court entered its last break of the day, defense lawyer Philip Cohen sought to convince the judge that Jen B mischaracterized what was in the NDA. Olmedo had little time for the protest and effectively shut it down, at least for now. Back on the stand for the last hour of today's session and questioned by Assistant DA Mueller, Jen B went into depth about a mid-2004 letter she wrote to Scientology Mike Ellis, International Justice Chief Mike Ellis. I think this might be a typo. Asking permission to go to police and report that she had been violently AR'd by Masterson a year beforehand. In the correspondence, which was placed up on the video monitor in the court, Jen B wanted assurance from the high-ranking Ellis that she would not be punished and declared a suppressive person by the church. A timely response from Ellis implied to Jen B that she had permission to make a civil action against Masterson, but could not go to law enforcement, which she did a few months later anyway. Concluding his questioning, Mueller asked Jen B what she feared about testifying this week. I broke that NDA about 50 times, she said in a firm voice. I'm supposed to tell you Mr. Duncan and I had a disagreement and we resolved it. The witness added, Jen B also noted that every violation is $200,000 under the requirements of the 2004 NDA. And more damages bake in stating that in the 2019 civil suit, she was suing for peace after being allegedly harassed and intimidated. Jen B half looked around and said that she was afraid of half of this courtroom, implying there were a number of Scientologists in the room. That statement was soon followed by the beginning of cross-examination from defense attorney Philip Cohen, who came out strongly attacking what Jen B told and didn't tell the LAPD in 2004. Looking to address apparent differences in what was said 2004 and what has been said in 2022, the pacing and vocally punctuating lawyer focused on what he called misrepresenting something versus omitting something. Okay. Depending if Scientology is involved or not, Jen B replied to Cohen's questions of what was said 18 years ago and what was said in court documents and testimony. That's been asked and asked over again, interjecting Judge Olmedo, cutting the line of questioning off. Cohen then moved on to the September 2022 intimate encounter between Masterson and Jen B, and whether it was consensual then and not now, in her opinion. This has to be a typo. This absolute Deadline. I'm sorry if there's anybody from Deadline watching. Y'all need some editing here because there's a number of typos here that I've gone over, and this seems to be a pretty egregious one because it says September 2022. I highly doubt that Jen B had an intimate encounter with Danny Masterson last month, considering everything that has been happening. So I this is one thing that is now getting to a point of frustration for me personally. So I think that what they're talking about is maybe September 2003 or maybe 2002 even. He didn't get much further with that than he had tried with his previous line of questioning. That's been asked and answered, Judge Olmedo said. Now, so we do see the judge getting involved with objections, and based on the way that this is written, it suggests that the judge interjected herself as opposed to the prosecution objecting and then the judge kind of like responding and making a ruling. I don't know either way. It's unclear based on how this is written, but if this is the judge just interjecting, that's a pretty strong bit of evidence that she is getting a little bit annoyed, and the jury might pick up on that at a certain point. Jen B revealed that her opinion on whether or not the 2002 incident was non-consensual changed in 2018, but before Cohen could pursue the matter further, the judge ended the day session at 3:49 p.m. Pacific time. Cross-examination will resume in the morning. After the jury left the courtroom, Cohen returned to the settlement agreement /NDA and how much Jen B had made public. Again, he asked the judge for permission to ask about the portions of that agreement to try to clear up for the jury from the defendant's perspective. Okay. I mean, they would be able to either cross-examine her, which is what he's asking to be able to dive a little bit deeper into, or ostensibly they'd be able to characterize this NDA in a different way, either through Danny Masterson or through Singer, the attorney that I guess provided it to the parties. I don't know. Denying the defense request, the judge did promise to draw up a rules of the road for tomorrow to see how the NDA may be brought up. She also suggested the prosecution and the defense talk to each other and work out a stipulation. Yeah, so there's a number of ways that the two sides are sort of duking it out over what comes in and what stays out. Perhaps transitioning the trial to its next stages earlier Wednesday, before the prosecution ended its questioning at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time, Jen B, widening the sphere of investigation and specified her association with Christina B. The latter is fellow former Scientologist, a fellow alleged victim in this case, and a now co-plaintiff in the civil suit against Scientology itself for harassing and stalking the victims once they went public with their claims against Masterson. Jen B said that while she met Christina B a few times in the late 1990s, when the latter was Masterson's girlfriend, the two never really got to know each other until 2016. Jen B also noted she spoke at length with NT, another alleged victim in this case and another co-defendant in the 2019 civil case, for the first time in 2017. So yeah, I will say the timing on them, meeting with each other, interacting with each other, this kind of follows with Jen B first going to the police, first trying to make reports. There are it looks like there's evidence of her first trying to get her story to the police, to the upper echelons of Scientology, back in 2003, 2004, which is a long, long time before she says that she really met with Christina B and with NT, the other two alleged victims here. So that cuts against Masterson's theory that the three of them got together to cook up, this whole thing against him. And it does speak to some legitimacy of their claims, especially if the vast majority of what Jen B is saying here is consistent with what she was telling to the police, right? Because it seems like so far what she's said here is or the one point of inconsistency between what she said here and what she said back then is whether or not there was that he threatened her with a firearm during the incident. And if that was just something that was left out in the moment, maybe that was something that didn't happen, or maybe there was so much that she was talking about that she left that detail out. That's also possible. So I don't know, man. This is a muddy case, and we're gonna continue to follow it. But that's all I've got for Masterson. But already a lot, and this is gonna be I think a tough one to sort of parse through. I don't know how you guys are feeling about it. If you are more on the, ooh, you know what? Let me do a poll. I don't know why I didn't think about this earlier. Okay. All right. We got a poll here. So from the evidence so far, do you think Masterson did what he's charged with doing? So I'll put this up for a few minutes, and then we'll see what folks think. And in the meantime, I am going to turn to Kevin Spacey, and we're gonna be spending quite a bit more time on this because we've got even more to go over with this. We've got Kevin Spacey testified. We've got an expert that testified about Rapp. So from Kevin Spacey's side, so calling into question the PTSD claim that Rapp says that he has PTSD from it. Yeah, so there's quite a bit, and then they already had, I believe, from I was skimming these articles. Sometimes I read these in depth, and then sometimes I skim through them, and I'm like, oh, I'll react in real time. So I'm pretty sure they also had their closing arguments as well. So we should be getting a verdict in this one pretty soon. But let's see. Okay, so let's turn to it. Okay. We are going to start with an article from the Associated Press. Okay. So this is from 2 days ago, coming from talking about the testimony by Kevin Spacey. It says, Kevin Spacey testifies of SA claims not true, which is about what we would expect him to say, right? This is what he's saying here. And let me make this a little bit bigger. I'll make myself smaller so you guys can see the text and not me. Okay. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Okay. All right. An emotional Kevin Spacey testified in a New York courtroom Monday that he never made a sexual pass at the actor Anthony Rapp, who was sued for millions of dollars in damages, claiming the Academy Award-winning actor tried to take him to bed when he was 14. Repeatedly, Spacey denied Rapp's claims that a then 26-year-old Spacey picked him up like a groom does a bride after a 1986 party at his Manhattan apartment and put him on his bed before lying on top of him. Rapp testified earlier in a civil trial in which he accuses Spacey of assault and battery that he squirmed out from underneath and inebriated Spacey in the fully clothed encounter before fleeing, only to have Spacey follow him to the door and ask if he was sure he wanted to leave. And this is something that, looking at this case, there have been a lot of stories that have come out about Kevin Spacey since Anthony Rapp kind of opened the door here, right? With his allegation against him during the Me Too movement. A lot has come out. And I don't know if it's just because I wasn't paying attention to Kevin Spacey before this, but I mean, before Spacey responded to the allegations by Rapp by like officially coming out of the closet, I didn't realize that he was gay. Like I had no idea. And maybe I just, like I said, maybe I just wasn't paying attention to Kevin Spacey. But I just was fairly surprised. And I mean, not that it changes anything with that, but the context of it was very strange. The context of in which he decided to come forward to be an open gay man in the world. But there are a lot of stories out there that make a lot of people feel very, let's just say, icky about Kevin Spacey, right? But I will say that a case where somebody is asking for $40 million in a civil suit, where this is from Rapp's testimony, right? This is from his side, that he's saying that inebriated Spacey picked him up on a bed. He was fully clothed, placed himself on him. It doesn't seem like there's any allegation from Rapp that he touched him in a sensitive area, that he, reached underneath any clothing. So it's, yes, perhaps an unwanted advance. Is it worth $40 million? I don't know. I don't know. I feel strange saying this. I don't want to be an apologist for someone who may have done this thing, but at the same time, the other part that I still have a hard time squaring with that is the fact that we are talking about a 26-year-old and a 14-year-old. That's the part that it kind of keeps bringing me back into thinking like this is wholly inappropriate, very, very, very inappropriate, regardless of whether clothes or non-clothes are involved. So this is another one that's I think kind of tough, but I don't know if I see a jury finding for liability, finding that Kevin Spacey is liable, or if they do, I don't see them giving a verdict for the full $40 million. That is a lot of money. That is a lot of money. Okay. They are not true, Spacey said of the allegations, first made in 2017 in an interview with BuzzFeed. The accusations, along with more made by others, brought to an end Spacey's popular role on the Netflix series House of Cards and abruptly derailed his career. Spacey, 63, dabbed tears from his eyes with a tissue and sniffled as he described immediate intense pressure from publicists and lawyers to respond with compassion and empathy and an apology to Rapp's claims. They told me I couldn't push back on the story, Spacey recalled. I knew I wouldn't have any sexual interest in Anthony Rapp or any child. That I knew. At the time, with the hashtag #MeToo movement gaining momentum, the industry was very nervous. There was a lot of fear in the air about who was going to be next, he said. He added, I was shocked. I was frightened and I was confused. I knew I had never been alone with Anthony Rapp. After the article, the two-time Oscar winner said on Twitter that he didn't recall the encounter with Rapp, adding, "But if I did behave then as he describes, I owe him the sincerest apology for what would have been deeply inappropriate drunken behavior, and I am sorry for the feelings he describes having carried with him all these years." His manager said it was the best way to contain a crisis that was going to get worse and to avoid being accused of being a victim shamer, he said. Yeah, that does seem like that quote here, where he says like, "But if I did behave as he then describes," um, it does feel like a very carefully crafted statement that doesn't admit to anything illegal, but at the same time, it's like it tries to be empathetic, but it doesn't. Based on what I remember, how people reacted to that statement, I don't think that it was really received very well. Like I don't think people saw that as very authentic. And I think part of it also was that he decided to also add to that he was coming out as a gay man. Spacey told jurors he now regrets my entire statement. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that being legit, even if the jury does find him to be liable. "I've learned a lesson, which is never apologize for something you didn't do," he said. Spacey said he had met Rapp and another aspiring actor, John Barrowman, backstage following Spacey's Broadway performance in Long Day's Journey into Night. He said he took them to dinner, to a nightclub, and finally to his studio apartment, where he flirted with Barrowman, who was 19 at the time, but showed no interest in Rapp before the two visitors left. "Anthony Rapp seemed like a kid and John Barrowman seemed like a man," Spacey said in an account that was backed up by a deposition by Barrowman. At the time, Rapp was performing in Precious Sons on Broadway. Rapp, a 50-year-old regular on Star Trek Discovery on television, who was part of the original Broadway cast of Rent, has testified that he and Barrowman went home immediately after the nightclub outing, and days later, Spacey invited him to his apartment party, waiting until other guests left to make a move on him. The Associated Press does not usually name people alleging SA unless they come forward publicly, as Rapp has done. Spacey, testifying on a day when Judge Lewis A. Kaplan tossed out Rapp's claim of intentional infliction of emotional distress on the grounds that it duplicated aspects of the assault and battery allegation, also was asked if he has been private about his personal life over his career. "I grew up in a very complicated family dynamic," he said, explaining that rants by his father when he was a youngster led him to hate bigotry and intolerance. "My father was a white supremacist and neo-Nazi," Spacey said. "It meant that my siblings and I were forced to listen to hours and hours of my father lecturing us about his beliefs." As Spacey became interested in theater, he said he endured the screams of his father, who used to yell at me at the idea that I might be gay. Interesting. And there's not really many ways to know whether or not that's true. I mean, other than asking his siblings, but I have no idea if any of them testified. As far as I've seen, none of them did. So, but that also could be an interesting scapegoat, looking from the perspective of Anthony Rapp. Prior to Monday's testimony, Spacey said he had never talked about these things publicly ever. He said he had been considering revealing that he was gay publicly for about 18 months before deciding to announce it after Rapp's allegations came out. Spacey cried as he described immediately regarding the timing of the revelation, as he faced backlash in the gay community, including from friends and others who thought he was using the announcement to change the subject to deflect. "It was really wrong and it was really bad, and I'm deeply sorry," he said as his voice cracked. Oh, and that's the end of the article. Sometimes they really end very abruptly here. But yeah, he did get a lot of backlash. For basically using that opportunity, so to speak, to come out as a homosexual. But interesting that he says that about his father being a white supremacist and a neo-Nazi. That's the first time that I think anyone has ever heard about that. So that could be just a very convenient sort of excuse to sort of try to garner sympathy. It's kind of tough to tell before or without being able to evaluate him ourselves, right? And I will say, even then, Kevin Spacey is also notably a very, very good actor. So this was something that sort of came up in the Depp v. Heard trial, right? Like who's the better actor? Is somebody testifying authentically, or are they acting or trying to put across a certain vibe, a certain message, a certain story narrative that is not real? It's that's an aspect that we can't tell here without looking at him testifying by himself. But there are ways even to tell if somebody's acting or if somebody is being authentic and actually describing things as they happened authentically. And that's why we've had Spidey from Behavioral Arts. We've had him on the channel quite a bit to talk about this kind of stuff. We had him extensively during the Depp trial to talk about it. And it would be such a fascinating thing to see him analyze this testimony by Kevin Spacey. So unfortunately, we are not able to do that. Before we get to the next article here to talk about the next details on this case, we got some super chats here. Andy the Game Maker, hail Xenu, thanks brother. Marie Johansson, welcome to Bike Club. Thanks so much for joining and for supporting the channel. So I hope that you will be able to make it with us tomorrow for our members only live stream. If not, it'll be available for the for a replay. But that would be awesome, and I'm so happy to have you here in part of Bike Club. And Secret McSquirrel says, "Hey, you watching? Please hit that like button." Thanks so much for the super chat. And India agrees with you. India agrees. She says, "Hit the like button, guys." Yeah, if you haven't done so already, if you're enjoying this, if you're finding it interesting or informative, it does help to sort of push the video to the YouTube algorithm. And to help it get picked up by other people. But okay, with that, let's get to the next article on this very difficult case. Okay. This is from the New York Post, and it says, expert testifies Kevin Spacey accuser Anthony Rapp has traits of personality disorder. This could be this is interesting because this feels like this is a play out of a playbook. Like somebody was watching the Depp trial and thought that worked in the Depp trial, so let's try it here. That's my initial reaction, but let's see if the details show it otherwise. Why are you whining? Why are you whining? It's okay. I'll be done soon. Soon enough anyway. Okay. So let's see here. Okay. And also, before I do that, let me close this poll. Wow. 92%. We've got 178 votes. 92% people said, from the evidence so far, do you think Masterson did what he's charged with doing? 92% said yes. 7% said no. I did see that someone in the chat said that there needs to be an option for I don't know, but I wanted to see what people's thoughts were, if they were leaning one way or another. But anyway, okay, let's get to the meat of this here, because I want to see what the expert testimony said after Kevin Spacey testified himself, to see what they had to say about Anthony Rapp, because this is very interesting here. Oh yeah, and yeah, Terry Holcomb in the chat. No, I don't think she has to go out, because I literally just took her out like half an hour before we started here. So I think she's just wants food. You know what? Let me see if Mr. Bites can give her food. All right, maybe he'll get my text. Okay. All right, let's get back to it. Expert testifies Kevin Spacey accuser Anthony Rapp has traits of personality disorder, and I'm wondering if it makes a difference for them to say that Rapp has traits of personality disorder, or to say that that Anthony Rapp has a personality disorder. I don't know. Let's read on. Kevin Spacey accuser Anthony Rapp has traits of narcissistic personality disorder, an expert witness called by the Oscar winner told jurors at his intimate battery trial on Tuesday. Psychiatrist Alexander Barty made the revelation as he responded to questioning by Spacey's attorney Chase Skolnick in the Manhattan Federal Court civil trial. As an expert hired by the defense, Barty said he read Rapp's autobiographical book and identified traits or features of the disorder in stories the actor detailed in the memoir. I don't believe that. I think this is sham evidence right here. That's not good testimony to me. To say that I read an autobiography that was written by him. There are so many different people that have various touch points on an autobiography, even if it was written by Rapp. There are so many other people that can get involved and say, and modify what gets said, how things come across to the reader. I don't think that's a good basis for saying that he's got potentially traits of narcissistic personality disorder. And this also may be one of the reasons why the expert is saying that he has traits of them as opposed to having narcissistic personality disorder. Because if you are basing like this reminds me of what's his name? The quacky doctor that was hired by Amber Heard, that was trying to use Johnny Depp's portrayals in the various movies that he's been in to try to Spiegel. Thank you. I see it in the chat. Dr. Spiegel. That's what that reminds me of. Is Dr. Spiegel using the movies that Johnny Depp has starred in to try to like diagnose him in a weird way, or to try to like hint that he's diagnosing him in a weird way. I don't like that at all. Also, fun times. You just gifted 5 Legal Bites memberships. Thanks so much. That is so kind of you, so generous of you. And I really appreciate you sharing the love again. I know you've done it before, and I love seeing that kind of generosity. So thank you so much. And folks that are now in a Bite Club, welcome to Bite Club. I hope you guys can join us and have fun with us and some of the perks that we've got here. Okay, back to the article. In one story, Rapp described helping save his mother from a band of criminals who were preying on drivers when he was 1 year old. In Rapp's telling, his mother looked back at him as the criminals approached, and they then did not pursue their car, Barty testified. People with features of the disorder may embellish their role in a story or may actually take credit for things outside their control, similar to the anecdote Rapp shared in his book, The Doctor Told Jurors. But hang on. It's so, and it could be just the way that this is written, that there's like some nuance and detail that's missing here. But it could also be that there's nothing there, right? If Rapp is just saying, if he's detailing a scary instance from when he was 1 year old. I mean, number one, I don't know how many people remember things from when they were 1 year old. I don't know. But number two, if he's just saying that this was a harrowing experience and his mother looked back at him as they approached and then they didn't pursue the car, I don't see what this detail says about something that Rapp did to prevent that from happening as a 1 year old. I don't know. There's nothing here that seems like there's been an embellishment of a story. So I don't know. But again, maybe this is just the journalism level here of the reporting level here, right? So I've got several layers of issues so far with this expert's testimony. Barty said he also disagreed with a psychologist hired by Rapp's team who testified earlier in the case that the actor suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder because of his alleged encounter with Spacey. Last week, Dr. Lisa Rocchio told jurors that she diagnosed Rapp with delayed onset PTSD as a result of Spacey allegedly picking him up and laying on top of him on a bed when he was 14 years old. Rapp alleges the encounter with Spacey in 1986 was an SA by the actor, an intimate advance, I'll say, by the actor who was 26 at the time and described it as the most traumatic experience of his life. Hey, Kate Leslie, thanks so much for also gifting a bunch of memberships, 10 Legal Bites memberships to other folks in the chat. That is so kind and so generous of you. Thank you so much for doing that as well. And I know you just became a member yourself, so I really appreciate you sharing the love with other people too. Thank you so much. That's so, like I said, so kind of you, so generous. And I love that we've got so many people in this community that like to do that for other people. It's a great thing that I love to see. So hopefully you guys can come and join us for tomorrow's live stream as well. Wonderful. Okay, but back to this article. I will say, so that this was the other thing that made me very skeptical of Anthony Rapp's testimony, right? Or Anthony Rapp's narrative in this case, is this idea that he has delayed onset PTSD, and the PTSD was delayed until 2017 when he came forward with his claim, which was also the height of the Me Too movement. This is, in contrast with the last case with Danny Masterson, right? Where I talked about how, Jen B she was coming forward to the police. She was trying to make police reports back in 2004, 2003. She's trying to come forward with these claims before she has met the other women that are involved in the case. That speaks to probably some legitimacy of her claims. Maybe it ends up meaning nothing, but to me, it does seem like that does give her some more credibility. When you have something like this, where we've got PTSD coming from an incident from 1986, it doesn't show up until 2017. That's something that is, I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a bit skeptical of that. At the same time, I'm also super skeptical of what Spacey's expert witness is saying here about this narcissistic personality disorder. To me, so far, what I'm reading and what I have read before this point, these expert witnesses are kind of canceling each other out. I don't trust either one of them. Barty's testimony came after a lengthy cross-examination of Spacey, who responded to questions from one of Rapp's attorneys for several hours Tuesday. Spacey repeatedly denied the allegation at the heart of the suit and said he was driven to apologize to Rapp in a statement in 2017 by public relations professionals he had hired at the time. On Monday, Spacey broke down on the stand while describing his decision to come out of the closet. In the same statement, he responded to Rapp's allegation. Rapp's attorney pressed him on that Tuesday, asking if it was a tactic to deflect the conversation. No, sir, Spacey responded. Spacey's attorneys are expected to rest their case by Wednesday. So, yeah, like I said, these expert witnesses, and this can happen in a case, right? You can have a case where both expert witnesses are actually seem fairly credible, and what they're saying kind of makes a lot of sense, and you sort of have to figure out what's what between them. Or sometimes you'll have two expert witnesses that you don't really agree with either one of them. That's basically how I feel about this so far. All right, let's go to our final article here from Deadline this time. So another lengthy one from Deadline with their funky ways of updating these cases, right? Okay. Final one here. So now we're going to get into. Oh, okay. Sorry, I am mistaken. I said earlier that closing arguments are probably already happened on Wednesday, but they are happening today apparently. So we'll have one more update, I suppose, from this case before the jury comes out with a verdict. Kevin Spacey trial lawyers clash over jury instructions after defense rests. Closing arguments set for Thursday. Update. Okay. Let me go. Okay. Previously 11:32 a.m. Let's see if there's. Okay. Not as lengthy as the last one. So that's good. Okay. Kevin Spacey's lawyers on Wednesday wrapped up their case in Star Trek Discovery actor Anthony Rapp's $40 million intimate misconduct suit against the embattled former star. And again, I'm for folks that are new in here, I am self-censoring so that I don't trip up the YouTube algorithm here, but I have no problem with saying these words in real life. I'm just trying to play by the rules here, right? Okay, with a psychiatrist hired by Spacey's team as the last witness before jurors hear closing arguments scheduled for Thursday. A lawyer for Rapp, Richard Steigman, spent the morning grilling the defense's mental health expert, forensic psychiatrist Alexander Barty, who testified that Spacey's accuser isn't afflicted with post-traumatic stress disorder and instead shows traits of narcissism. Steigman challenged Barty for saying that Rapp self-reported off-the-charts levels of trauma, anxiety, and depression to the psychologist hired by Rapp's legal team, while showing moderate levels of mental distress or none at all on other tests that rely less on the test taker's own word. And this is more. This kind of continues to confirm my suspicion about the PTSD element here. Now, I will say also, he doesn't necessarily have to have PTSD to have for the jury to find Kevin Spacey liable. That to me would probably end up minimizing the verdict that the jury comes back with if they do find Spacey liable. But it's not a requirement that he have PTSD in order to win this case, at least on the liability element. But I personally am increasingly skeptical of the PTSD element by Rapp's side. And part of this is because of the fact that other tests that rely less on the test taker's own word show that he basically had moderate levels of mental distress. That's going to be something that the jury is likely to take into account here. Steigman produced one test Rapp took, a so-called anxiety inventory with a maximum score of 63, indicating the highest levels of anxiety. Rapp's score was 19. 19 out of 63, off the charts, right, Doc? Steigman said. Barty said off the charts was his clinical judgment and an assessment of the totality of his own screening of Rapp. Rapp's mental state and whether Spacey affected it is a central question of this federal case in Manhattan, brought under a New York state law that allows decades-old allegations of sexual abuse, well, there I said it, to be tried after the normal statute of limitations. Rapp testified that in 1986, when he was 14, a 26-year-old Spacey physically picked him up like a groom picks up a bride, placed him on a bed in Spacey's apartment, and then climbed on top of him in an attempt to initiate an intimate encounter. Rapp testified that he wriggled free, but it was still the most traumatic single I think it's supposed to say event in his life. Again, I think Deadline needs some quality control on their edits here. The Rapp team psychologist, Lisa Rocchio, testified that Rapp has struggled with relationships, sexuality, anger, depression, and ever since in 2017, developed delayed onset full-blown PTSD. The other part about it that is, to me personally, which so far this article hasn't mentioned, is the fact that he also talked about how he saw Kevin Spacey's movies over the years since 1986. So he would go and see his movies, and he says that was because he was an actor and he felt like it was his job to see those kinds of movies, especially, I mean, because we're talking about some big movies that would legitimately be strange for someone to be a professional in this space and to say, no, I've never seen American Beauty. Right? Like, no, I've never seen Seven. No, I've never, like some of the movies that Kevin Spacey has been in, I would agree with that. But if he had been going to see these movies and been confronted by seeing Kevin Spacey on the screen, I wonder how does that play into the PTSD element, right? Like how is it then that it wasn't until 2017 when the Me Too movement was happening that all of a sudden then he has full-blown PTSD? Why not PTSD coming from going and seeing him on a giant screen, sitting in an audience? I granted I am not a psychologist, and so this is not my area of expertise, but this is just me asking questions, trying to square these things in my brain, and things that don't seem to quite fit for me. Okay. Rapp's lawyers sought to show that Rapp gave consistent answers across a battery of tests, some entirely self-reported and some designed to identify people who fake or exaggerate mental illness. Excuse me. Spacey's lawyers have suggested that if Rapp isn't faking symptoms to bolster his claim for millions of dollars in damages, he's blaming Spacey for other, arguably more traumatic events in his life, including another intimate encounter at age 14 that he wrote about unfavorably in his memoir. That is potentially another fair point. I mean, we haven't seen those details from that memoir brought up from the accounts of this trial, right? Like we haven't seen any reporting from Rapp's testimony talking about these him being asked about these various encounters that were in his memoir. But if they did go into that, and I would anticipate that the defense would have, because that would be relevant to get into, that's something that the jury might call into question. Again, with the PTSD element. Barty said that Rapp telling friends over the years that Spacey abused him, but not his therapist until after he went public with his claim, was proof of a narcissistic tendency to turn the spotlight on himself. Steigman, in his last words on the matter, asked, "Are there narcissists who become A-list actors and win Tonys and other awards?" An apparent reference to Tony and Oscar winner Spacey. I'm not really sure what the point of that question is. I mean, other than to suggest that Kevin Spacey is a narcissist. We saw the reporting from Rapp's expert witness, but there wasn't any reporting on what that expert witness said about Kevin Spacey, any kind of an evaluation of Kevin Spacey, if there was anything about him being a narcissist. This question only makes sense if there was something that came out that hasn't been apparent in the reporting here. So this is an example of like something kind of sticks out, and we're asking a question here that things might not be exactly the way that things have been reported. We'll see. I don't know if this makes sense, right? Barty said that Rapp telling friends over the years that Spacey abused him, but not his therapist until after he went public with his claim, was proof of a narcissistic tendency to turn the spotlight on himself. I don't know. I mean, I would be interested to see what the rebuttal is from the other side, right? From Rapp's side, to say why did he not tell his therapist? If he's talking about other things, I would be also curious to know what other topics he and his therapist have covered, if there are similarly traumatic instances in his life, or instances that we would think are similarly traumatic. That calls into question, why wouldn't you bring up something like this if you're willing to talk about these other things? Man, I don't know. All right, moving on though. With that, Judge Lewis Kaplan sent jurors home until Thursday. He then entertained and denied a motion by defense lawyer Jay Barron, who already got the judge to throw out a claim of emotional distress, to throw out Rapp's last remaining claim of physical battery. Kaplan also declined a motion to remove the punitive damages claim, but he indicated that he might revisit the questions while keeping the battery claim intact, at least for now, and working with the lawyers to decide what exactly jurors will be asked to decide. Rapp's allegations were among several that made Spacey an early focus of the hashtag #MeToo movement in 2017. The American Beauty and The Usual Suspects Oscar winner and multiple Emmy nominee for House of Cards also faces trial in the UK for an alleged SA, with that case set for June, and he is on the hook for $31 million awarded to House of Cards producer Media Rights Capital because the claims hastened the end of the show and were deemed a breach of his acting and producing agreements. That probably is they always are very vague as to like what was the breach, but it probably is some kind of a morality clause, because a lot of these actors and news anchors and uh jobs where somebody is a public face for a lot of other people, a lot of times when they have a contract with some production company or what have you, a lot of times there will be some kind of a morality clause that is relatively broadly drafted, I'll admit, that basically says, like, if you do something that there's a ton of public backlash, we can fire you, and also then if it harms us, then we can also, sue you for what have you. um as with all the accusations against him made over the past several years, Spacey denies anything inappropriate ever occurred. The trial is expected to wrap up this week. Okay, but let's go to what the update was at the top here. There's not too much here. With the jurors gone, Judge Lewis Kaplan and the lawyers in Anthony Rapp's civil suit against Kevin Spacey trial spent their last hour in court Wednesday hashing out instructions in a verdict form for jurors who will be hearing closing arguments beginning Thursday morning. In the back and forth over how to phrase the legal instructions that will guide the jury's deliberations, the judge made a couple of rulings that appeared to favor Spacey's defense team over Rapp's. Kaplan said there's bundles of evidence that Rapp contributed to his own mental distress by going public with his claim of intimate misconduct, exposing himself to the lawsuit, and watching Kevin Spacey movies ad nauseum, despite the discomfort he testified that the movies caused him. Yeah. I mean, because it didn't sound like, based on what came out of trial, and again, this is based on reporting. Reporting can be inaccurate or misleading, but it didn't sound like he was like forced by anyone to go. A jury could find that was unreasonable, he said, declining to modify jury instructions on whether any of Rapp's own conduct would lessen Spacey's liability. A Spacey lawyer, Chase Skolnick, asked for language saying that Rapp violated the judge's order against trying to introduce other people's allegations against Spacey, and that jurors could use that violation to weigh Rapp's credibility. I came forward because I knew I was not the only one that Kevin Spacey had made inappropriate sexual advances to, Rapp testified, a pronouncement the judge quickly ordered struck from the record and told jurors to ignore. The judge denied the request, telling Skolnick, "It's your job to sum up to the jury, not mine." Fair. Very fair. But he added that he was very troubled by what Rapp said, having already stricken something else Rapp had said earlier in the trial. "I brought this lawsuit hoping that I maybe could help protect others." Man. Well, okay. So that's the end of that one. And it looks like, I mean, the closing arguments are probably happening maybe even right now. So there's got to be some kind of reporting that'll be coming out later today about this. I will try to get something out as quickly as possible to be accessible by everybody on this, because I think that this has been a very interesting case to cover. And yeah, Manthadani seems like a pretty quick case. This has been like lightning speed. This is like the reporting on it since the very beginning has been like talking about it in those terms, saying that this case has been going really, really, really fast. So that's definitely true. So, all right, we'll see what happens with these closing arguments. But first, before I head out, we've got some super chats to go through. Just because, thanks so much for the super chats, as you did your best. You held off as long as you could. I know it's after you come across a certain word or phrase enough times, it's bound to slip out at some point, right? So I did try. But thanks so much. I appreciate the super chat. And interlocution, thanks so much for the generous super chat as well. If it traumatized him to see Kevin on the screen, why watch those particular movies in the first place? If it happens once, it doesn't make sense to keep watching. Yeah, those are legitimate questions as well. I think I would anticipate that being things that the jury is going to be talking about when they go to deliberate in this case, because it's that kind of his history of going to see a lot of Kevin Spacey movies as they came out in theaters is something that is, it kind of stands in contrast, right? With him saying that he has PTSD over having to confront whatever happened with him and Kevin Spacey. Um, it does kind of call that into question. And especially because I think he also referred to seeing him in theaters as well, which is a different experience than seeing him, on VHS when that existed, or DVD or what have you, at home, when you can kind of control the environment a bit more. You can get up and walk away. You can, turn all the lights on in the room. You can, like there are things, it's a smaller screen that you're confronting this person. There are ways to watch that is very, very different and maybe less intimidating than going to see it in a very dark, large movie theater. So yeah, that's, and your question again, why those particular movies in the first place, is also a good one. I mean, it could be because he just knew that Kevin Spacey was a really good actor, and that was what he wanted to learn from his acting, I guess. I don't know, but there are plenty of other good actors that he could have like studied to try to pick up skills from, at the same time, right? So yeah, that's, like I said, some very good questions, and I definitely anticipate that the jury is likely to go into some of those, or some very similar ones as well. So, all right, folks, that about does it for me for today. This has been a lot that we went through. We're at almost 2.5 hours today. But thank you so much for hanging out with me and going through these cases, going through the stuff, the OnlyFans murder case, the Courtney Clenney and Christian Obumseli case. As that one, as we've got some more leaked information that came out, and then we went through Danny Masterson as that one kind of kicks off, and it's already very, very muddy. That one's going to be a really tough one as well. But and then Kevin Spacey, once again, another one that's a bit muddy, but I don't know, guys. I have a feeling, I do have a feeling that this is, he's not going to get the $40 million, I think. And maybe I'll be wrong. I've been wrong before. I can definitely be wrong again. But I don't know if they're going to fine for liability, or if they do, I don't know if he's going to get the full $40 million. I don't really think so. But anyway, with all that said, thanks for joining me. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for folks for engaging in the chat, and for liking the video. Thank you again to the mods. You guys have been wonderful here, in making sure that this space is a warm and welcoming space for agreement or disagreement. We're talking about some tough cases here. We're going through some touchy subjects. So, having some empathy for varying viewpoints is an important thing. And we are all able to take some standpoints that can be sometimes very uncomfortable, but doing so with good faith arguments, trying to reason with evidence. All of that is super important, and I really, really appreciate for you guys for helping me to grow this space into one where we can all examine these cases that are really difficult and really try to get down to the bottom of what happened in these cases. So yeah, anyway, with all that said, thank you again. And I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day, afternoon, evening, what have you. And if you are in Bike Club, come and join us tomorrow. We'll be hanging out. It'll be super casual. And we'll be talking about whatever. We'll find out. We'll figure it out. We'll work our way through it. Okay. All right, guys. I hope you have, like I said, wonderful rest of the day. And if I don't see you tomorrow, I hope you have a wonderful weekend as well. All right, guys. I'll see you in the next video.